people's responses at the same time. Okay. Right, well, thanks for introducing yourselves. So this is the first of our 3 workshops. The next one is on Friday. This first one is just to introduce you to the project and to the funding call, and then for you to ask any questions. And then the one on Friday will be more in depth, looking at some of the processes, finance, due diligence and things like that that you have to complete as an applicant. So I'm just going to click through our presentation. So this one's, like I said, an introduction, and then Melise is going to give her finely tuned presentation about how to write grant applications. So Parvati, I don't know if you wanted to start off and then hand over to me, or if you just want me to carry on waffling and then you can join in when you feel well enough.
So I am Parvati Raghuram. I'm the principal investigator of this project, the Decolonizing Education for Peace in Africa. This is a project which began in 2020 April, just as COVID struck. It's a 4-year project, and it is modeled on it's a what is called a network plus model. A network plus model means that it has a few core projects which are proof of concept projects, and then it to which we add in new projects. So in effect, we act like a grant awarding body where we try and bring together new projects to actually enhance and to deliver some of the core aims of the project itself. It's an AHRC funded project, which means the Arts and Humanities Research Council, that is UKRI, which is the UK Research Innovation Grant. So because it's Arts and Humanities Research Council project, it means that arts and humanities are really important to it. It is also under something called the GCRF, which is the Global Challenges Research Fund. This is a fund, this is a pot of money which is coming out of the aid budget of the UK government, which means that it comes with a series of strings attached, primarily around the fact that it must align to the kind of development and aid objectives and the overall aid agenda. Within that, so we put together a call, a few of us, some of us were in the room today, and we were lucky enough to get it in a very competitive environment. There are 12 such Network Plus grants available, and many of them have got calls. So if for those of you who might be interested, you should also have a look at our website, because you can see links there to the other Network Plus calls, where you can, which also have sources of funding. So what are the aims and objectives of this particular project? The project is called Decolonizing Education for Peace in Africa, which means that we are focusing really on thinking about education in conflict areas. And in doing so, what we're trying to do is to look at the values and knowledges which are central to peace and which already exist in Africa. And how do we center them? So in some ways, what we're trying to do is to step away from the kind of imperative or the conversations around conflict as a necessary or inherent part of Africa, and actually to say, no, peace is an inherent part of Africa, and that peace education in Africa can build and draw on all those elements of peace in Africa. And we're focusing here specifically on values and knowledges, because there is a lot of work on skills, for instance, on classrooms, activities, and so on. But our focus is not just on that, but it is really primarily on values and knowledges. What values and knowledges already exist in Africa about peace? Like we said, we're really interested in arts and humanities and local context, and there are many ways in which you can engage with arts and humanities, and as our projects currently do. For instance, you might use arts and humanities to think about and to discover what are the values and knowledges that people have. For instance, you might, undertake some arts activity with young people in a conflict place, and then you might then be able to identify, okay, this is how arts can help us to excavate and to know what are the values and knowledges around peace. Or you could use arts and humanities in order to actually deliver some teaching, right? So you might work with arts teachers or with, and say develop capacity around how do you teach using arts in the classroom. A third alternative, and which many of our projects do, could be to actually work with artists and to use them in order to think about wider dissemination practices around values and knowledges. So there are different ways in which you could be using arts and humanities in the project, but of course it remains central. The other core pillar of our work is the fact that we were very interested in decolonizing the curriculum, but also the wider project. In doing so, what do we mean by decolonization? We're very keen to step away from the notion of decolonization as just a rhetorical activity. There's a lot of decolonization happening in various ways when people claim to decolonize. We're really keen not to do that. So we're very interested in activities which are actually aimed to be decolonial. And in later sessions, we'll give you examples of how that's been done. That means for us that the project is locally owned by people in the Global South, the most, often the disadvantaged people in the Global South, that it addresses the politics of knowledge production by working with those people in order to identify what are the local questions that are meaningful. So not necessarily to impose a question from here, but to start from the ground up, to work, to sometimes give up on projects if we think they're not colonial, if they look like they're colonizing, to rethink our strategies, to not use the projects as excavation grounds for identifying knowledges that people can then subsequently publish, but to center actual political change on the ground, an impact, which is something that the communities themselves want as central to the project. This means also delivering this in teaching and working and cutting across hierarchies, building together teams that are interdisciplinary. That means interdisciplinary, not just this, I should say interdisciplinary, but also teams which cut across, for instance, borders like NGOs, academics, communities, but actually working together across all these. And finally, the structure of the project. It's based on a UK Africa partnership model. The original project that we bid money for consisted of 4 proof of concept projects. And those are based in Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. They always had a partner in the UK and one in Africa who were working together to try and develop a project, and working very closely with an NGO, and the NGOs and the people who are on the ground are funded to do the work. So making sure that we don't really step on other people's toes in order to build academic careers. And in doing so, and the 4 projects, and you can hear more about these later, have all achieved really important and interesting things. They've all had different foci, because when you are decolonizing, you cannot set the agenda beyond a point. Basically, we have a broad frame, and within that we say, do what the people want, for which we really need to work very closely with the people. And those are the 4 projects that we have currently. Joe, next slide.
Thanks, Parvati. Oh, I've skipped ahead there. Do you want me to take over from here, or are you happy to carry on?
If you don't mind, that's great. Sorry about this, but I've got COVID and I'm just going to listen to the rest of it, and I'll step in when I can. I think this is the most I have done in the last 2 weeks. Thank you so much, Joe.
Okay, so as Parvati mentioned, these are the countries on the map here, are our proof of concept projects. So Nigeria, South Africa and Uganda. And they were our original partners, if you like. They're collaborators on the project. So at UNISA, the University of South Africa, Midlands State University in Zimbabwe, and the University of Abuja in Nigeria. And then across both Nigeria and Uganda, we have PADI, which is a NGO partner which does the work on the ground and partners with the academic partner. And then just a quick look at, just to give you an idea of the kind of projects that are happening in the countries, the proof of concept countries. So in South Africa, as in some of the other countries, Photovoice is one of the methodologies that they use. And that's used to represent aspects of participants' lives and experiences. So they'll be given a kind of brief of things that they might want to focus on. But again, as Parvati mentioned, that's not prescriptive. They might take photographs of things that we would never have imagined. So and as with previous projects, those photographs then exhibited, and in some cases the participants then talk to people who are viewing them about their photographs, why they took it, what it means to them. And it's an excellent way to engage with young participants. And the second methodology that they've used in South Africa is soundscape. So they've engaged a sound artist who has engaged with local communities and then come up with various sounds that represent the community, both people's ideas of peace and of conflict. And then in Nigeria, they've used a variety of methods, worked closely with communities in Binga, especially where they've, not in Binga, I've got completely wrong. That's in Zimbabwe, and in Nigeria, they've worked with IDP communities, developed really long-lasting relationships. So that started off with the precursor to this project, which we refer to as Development Award, and they've worked with different groups within the IDP camps, so they work cross-generationally, but particularly with the more marginalised communities within those camps, so the elders. And it's not just a case of going in and extracting stories from them, it's a case of providing them the things that they need in their community, so healthcare, somebody who can help them with support them psychologically, and then that means they get, they're improving their own kind of communities and allowing us to explore what their values and knowledges are around peace, both in the communities from where they came and where they're living at the moment. And then in Uganda, we also use the Photovoice methodology in the Orochinga refugee settlement. And similarly as with Nigeria, this is work that's continued from the Development Award. And the youth that were involved in the Development Award, we're hoping to then use them as trainers they will then train other participants in the methodology. And then in Zimbabwe, this is where they're working with participants and communities in Binga, and they've explored local arts and craft methods and about how they share stories in their communities, practices that they use, and how they come together as families and wider communities to talk about any grievances and how that can be used to then to promote peace across communities. And the academic partner, Midlands State University, they specialise in teacher training, so they've had quite extensive workshop with teachers where they held workshops for a week, for example, and allowed the teachers very much to lead that process and explored what it meant to them to decolonise their teaching materials. And then if we move to, so these are the location of our phase 2 project. So phase 2 for us was our first commissioning call, so it's the first grant awarding process that we went through. So this took place last year, and those projects started mainly in September and October last year, and they're due to end in June this year, and they are in Cameroon, Ethiopia, Kenya and Sierra Leone. And what they have provided is, ordinarily you'd expect the proof of concept projects to, in an ideal scenario, without COVID and without other kind of delays, those proof of concept projects would have informed what we do in phase 2. And that hasn't happened because of time delays and because of cuts to the aid budget. But what has happened, I guess, an unintentional kind of consequence is that these new projects, the phase 2 projects, there's been kind of an osmosis effect whereby we're learning from the phase 2 projects, and the proof of concept projects are also passing on knowledge to these new projects. So if, for example, in Cameroon, they're examining Indigenous practices with a focus on climate change, which is something new in the project. And it's about how the volume of Lake Chad is decreasing, and the impact that has on local populations which depend on it for work, food, crops, and how that alone is driving conflict in the area. And then capturing those participants' experiences through storytelling and interviews. And the project in Ethiopia is aiming to contribute to improving maternal and child health. And that's looking at exploring how people experience and discuss and narrate gender-based violence. And the project will interview participants and then look at holding theatre performances and also using Photovoice. So these ones are very much ongoing. Some of them, they're all at different stages of completion. In Kenya, we've had to change some of the work because of the nearby conflicts, but they're working in Kakuma and Dadaab, and they're using an approach called integrative social emotional learning to address the physical and emotional well-being of participants. And a lot of what those participants are doing is they're then going into local communities and passing on some of their knowledge. So they might be engineering students, for example, who then go into local communities and help with engineering projects, for example. In Sierra Leone, they're working quite extensively with various groups, teachers, youth and women's groups, traditional leaders, and quite renowned artists within Sierra Leone. And they've had large kind of storytelling events which take place anyway in Sierra Leone. So we've been able to work with those and kind of piggyback on them, I guess. And they're working on oral histories, dance, theatre, videography, and they've come up with some quite innovative ways of engaging with lots of people, in one go. And this then brings me to, that's, a very quick summary of our projects, and we can give you more information, but we're kind of conscious of the time. So this brings us to our phase 3. And hopefully you've all seen our website, which has all of the information you'll need. I'm sure there are more questions, but we launched that last week or the week before. And then in terms of what we're looking at, where there are 3 levels of funding. So we have individual researcher grants, which are up to £5,000. Because of Open University /UK rules, we can only award those to UK-based individuals. The small grants are between 10 and 30,000, and they're not limited to UK individuals. They are, or organisations and NGOs can apply for them as well, as we've put in the materials, as long as you can demonstrate that you have a capacity to and experience of doing research, or that you can partner with somebody who can bring that experience in for you. The same with the larger grants. So they're between 30 and 60,000. Because of the duration of the project itself, the wider project ends on the 31st of March 2024. And in order to give us time to kind of draw together all of the projects, we need these projects to finish by the 31st of March 2023. So we anticipate they'll be between 3 and 6 months duration. And then in terms of the key dates, the closing date is the 29th of April. We'll hold a panel meeting. It's either early or mid-May. And we've said decisions within 2 months, but it's quite possible that we'll get back to you sooner. We did last time, so I'm hopeful that we'll do it sooner because we don't want to run into things like summer holidays and things like that. In the next workshop, we'll go through a bit more about the processes and what kind of things we might ask for in terms of paperwork. So all of the details on our website, and like I said, the next workshop on Friday, you can register for that on our Eventbrite site, is that'll look at the due diligence requirements. So we have a form that, you know, it's from UKRI, because obviously we're publicly funded, we're using UK taxpayers money, so there are certain strings attached, and we just need to show that we're, you know, going through these processes. And then we'll talk to you about the OU financial processes, and then just the grant awarding process. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment because I need to switch over to Melissa's presentation.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks a lot, Joe, for this. So the application forms are already on the website, as Joe has highlighted. So I will now walk through some of the practicalities of, I can share my screen, Joe, if you want. Well, that might be easier, yeah. I'm just going to walk you through some practicalities of writing this application. So we made it sure that the application form is quite simple, straightforward, to the point, but of course there are some, you know, highlights that we want to take you through about how to write successfully applications. F5, sorry, just trying to make this, oops, oh, can you see me? Yes, you should be able to, perfect. So I'll just walk you through some of the practicalities of writing the application form, and then we'll have around 15 minutes for questions and answers. And as we have highlighted, please visit the website, the application forms are there. And if you have any questions, you can always come back to us. So I'll start with
Melise, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm not sure at the moment. We see your one slide, and then we see the slides that are coming next. It makes it quite small on the screen. I don't know if you just want to share the current slide, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Okay. How about this? I'm just trying to make it. Oh.
Melise, it was on presenter mode. That's why I think we were seeing your next slide. So if you just use the third button across.
Will that be fine? Is it fine now? Does it work for you?
That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So first thing is I'm going to talk about how to formulate research problem and coming up with an idea. So since this is a call on decolonizing peace education, and the idea of decoloniality sits at the core of the project, we very much want projects to have local partners in Africa, and these local partners can be NGOs, community members, artists, art-based organizations like museums, charities, or grassroots community artists, grassroots movements, community museums, like we have worked in Zimbabwe. So any kind of local organization will be very much sort of welcomed as your partner, and you need to have an African partner. In addition to a university, we would really very much want you to work with an African NGO or arts-based organization. So I think the first way forward would be, you know, like as you develop your idea, to come together with your colleagues, advisors, community, or the potential partners that you have in mind. Oh, sorry. And one of the fundamental questions that you could ask yourself and partners is that, what is the research problem in this particular community, or what is the research problem that we aim to address in this project, which has a peace focus or peace education focus? And then you can ask the question of, you know, have we done, you know, in this community, have we done any project like this before, or could this project feel a greater understanding or feel a particular gap in the literature? That's why actually we're asking you to write a literature review when you submit your application. It's an opportunity for you to show that what is the gap in the particular context that you're working with. So it's really important that you have these discussions with your partners on the ground, but you also go and read the literature and familiarize yourself with most up-to-date research. A second way you could do is also review the policy documents, review actually any documents if you have on that particular topic, or you can network with other researchers, liaise with your partners, artists, communities, or you can liaise with the projects, the phase 1 and phase 2 projects that we have in this larger consortium, and you can also possibly consider submitting joint proposals. So the first thing is that come up with a research problem, but it is really important that this research problem comes up from your discussions and engagements with your local partners and the communities that you will work with. So how do you know that? How do we know that our idea is great and fundable? I think this is a central, fundamental question we always ask. You know, I have this idea about whether it's fundable. So one of the first things that we'll be looking at whether it fills a gap in knowledge. So whether it contributes to something. And the second is whether it will make a difference. So if you do this project, what kind of a difference, what kind of an impact will you be creating in that society, in that community, or what kind of an impact and difference will you make in teaching peace pedagogies, or in peace education, or in peace building, or any artistic methods that you will be using. Another question you should ask yourself is that whether it employs an innovative methodology or a framework. So you could say that I'm using this particular framework, which have not been used in this kind of a peace research or conflict research or peace education project, where you can come up with a really innovative methodologies that will sort of change the scenery of the field, or of the whatever you're proposing the argument. And also the other thing is that these projects are often very short term, as you see, like 6 months or a maximum a year a project. Joe, you can just correct me if I'm wrong. How long the projects will be? A year, right? Maximum?
No, we're going for 6 months just because we need them to finish by March.
Just making sure that I don't give wrong information. So yes, 6 months. So it is a short-term investment by HRC and by our consortium. So we are looking for what this 6 months funding will create a longer-term gain for the stakeholders, for your communities on the ground, and for your partners. And also you need to ask yourself, as I mentioned, is what you propose a significance? Can it make is there a really compelling case there? Is it a good idea? Is there a gap in the knowledge? Is methodology appropriate? And have you considered any alternatives to this project? So it's really important that you have a thorough, a well-thought proposal where you think about your research problem, your contribution to knowledge, your methodology, your framework, the impact it can create, and the difference it will make. And also the value for money as well, which we will be speaking on Friday. So how do we make a compelling case? So first of all, it's important that you establish the significance of the project. Why this project matters? Why should you why are you doing this project, and why should we fund this project? So that's the most important thing that needs to go into your project. And then you have to describe and document the problem. What is the research problem that you're dealing with? And you need to document that this problem exists, and what this problem causes, and what happens if this problem is solved, and what kind of benefits it will bring to the community. So for this, of course, you need to review the current state of knowledge in the field. So we will be looking for this kind of an evidence from your literature review, where you will review the studies to make your point. And this will be followed by explain with the rationale for the project. So you need to have a very strong rationale that will again underpin the significance of your research. But as you write, you also need to guide the reader from more general to specific, rather than starting from a very specific problem. You can just mention the general problem and if you're looking into a case, if you're taking community as a case, then you need to show how the problem goes from more general to specific. Of course, you need to answer, as I said, why the project must be done, and you need to capture the attention of the reviewers often at the very first paragraph. And one way of doing is just like giving striking examples and statistics about a particular problem, or or if you're sort of working on a very hot topic, you could just highlight this in your introduction. So the other issue that we'll be looking is the background and significance. So once you have documented evidence and in a very clear and concise way, we expect that you state the problem, you highlight the gaps, but we also expect that you provided us the context as well and the background. We would like to see if you have done any research in that particular field or any projects in that particular field, whether this grant is building on your previous engagement with any community members, if there is already an ongoing research on the ground which you are building up. And also it is important to provide the context of the particular community, particular and conflict or particular issue, the research problem that you are working with, because often this needs to be embedded in a quite a contextual and a historical narrative. And the third issue is the goals and objectives. So, so one of the important things is that you need to have a very clear and concise goals of the project. And it should flow logically from the statement of needs. So actually the goals are and objectives are two different things. So the goals usually convey the intent, the aim of the proposed project, the overarching philosophy. You know, the goal of this project is to do this and that. Usually you will have a one or maximum two goals for a project, and actually these are very small funded projects, small scale projects. So we expect that you have one broad goal, and under this goal you can have several objectives that speak to these goals. And then you will have many methodological steps to achieve each of these objectives. So it goes like goals, objectives, and then your methodological steps to make sure that you address each of these objectives. But also you have to be very realistic because the funding is quite limited and you only have 6 months. So it is really important that you are coming up with feasible goals and objectives that can be achieved within 6 months. So the objectives, what are the objectives? Objectives are formed actually the essence of the project that you're proposing. And you can break the goal down into specific objectives or specific sort of measurable pieces or accomplishments. And of course, when you state objectives, discuss who is going to do what, when they will do it, and how it will be measured. So, and this is particularly important in the project management part, when you write about your data management or project management or evaluation, actually, monitoring and evaluation is about making sure that how your objectives will be met, who is going to do what, and when they will do it, and how it will be measured. So these kind of issues are something that you need to address in the milestones of the project. So you will have a milestone section and also evaluation and monitoring, where you need to make sure how you will evaluate and monitor your project in a way that you have addressed you have met all the objectives and the goals in your research. What are your strategies for evaluating and measuring, and making clear, you know, like that division of labor across the partners. So another important question, actually, probably one of the more core question, is the how question, the methodology. For this particular project, we are looking for arts and humanities methods. So as you have seen, most of our, actually all of our projects are dealing with a particular arts and humanities methodologies, which from storytelling, filmmaking, and dance, and photography, music, I think we have also oral life history, so we are engaging with different arts methods. So if you are proposing a project just on the focus group interviews and doing individual interviews with community members, that project will not be funded because it is not drawing on arts and humanities or participatory arts methods. That doesn't
Sorry, Melise, can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
I think we're stuck on slide 3. I'm not sure if you're
okay. Oh, so can you see slide 5? No,
we can see number 3.
I'm just so sorry for that.
That's okay. I must admit I didn't notice one of the other participants pointed it out. Thanks, Toby. Sorry to interrupt you mid-flight.
Can you see now slide 5?
I can still see number 3. I don't know if other people can see something different.
Oh, well, the mysteries and joys of technology.
No, I'm also on slide 3.
I'll just, I'll stop share and I'll start sharing again. Oh. Oops. Joe, would you mind sharing it?
Yeah, sure. I'll give that a try. Yeah. So we're on 5, yeah?
That's on 5, yeah.
Okay. Hang on, I'll just get to the right slide. I've skipped ahead. Okay. Is that the right one, Melise?
Well, 5.
Yeah.
Methodology.
And can everybody see that?
No, we're stuck at 2.
No, really?
Okay, perfect. Okay.
I'm just going to skip through all of them so we get to.
Exactly. So I think this is the most important part that that's just like that you have to pay attention. So you need to make sure that your project employs participatory arts methods. So if, as I said, if you're submitting a project on just document analysis, interviews, focus groups, and so on, it will not be funded because we are looking for you to do participatory research with the communities, with the artists. I mean, in most of the projects we work with artists, and this can be local artists, this can be crafts and so on as well. Art is quite a diverse field, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that you go and do, it could be even cultural heritage related activities too. But it is important that you are working with a participatory art or arts and humanities methodologies, and still you can use interviews. For example, you may do a Photovoice project, and at the end of your photography project, you can do exit interviews, focus interviews with your participants. That's quite fine, and that's what we expect you probably to do. But it is important that you justify your methodology, and it's important that you work with the appropriate partners who are experienced in that methodology. So if you are working with photography, it's important that you have a photographer, an artist, or if you're working with a dance project, it's important that you have an artist there to help you shape this project together with the community. Joe, can you just, I think I have another bit to appear on slide 5. Yeah, exactly. So as you write your methodology, you have to justify why you're using this particular method. For example, in one of my projects, we use graffiti and street art, and we were just focusing on the importance of street art, the protest art aspect of the street art, and how it could engage the youth with the wider public and so on. So it's really important that why you are looking for employing this particular method, and who will you be working with as you employ these methods. But in addition to that, you also need to focus, how will the activities be conducted? You need to give us a timeline and the number of the workshops, or how you will do this methodology, and for how long, where, and what facilities you'll be using it. So it just needs to be very clear in terms of addressing this how question. So next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. I think that's just a replication. Can we have the next slide? Yeah. So once you have, your literature review, the importance of your project, and the research gap, rationale, methodology, and all these bits, I think the next thing is to think about outcome impact. So outcomes are tangible benefits which result from the project activities. It can be quantitative and qualitative or measurable benefits of the research outputs experienced by those who receive them, and probably your community members or the partners that you work with, the NGOs that you work with. So it is about understanding what kind of a change you have created. And I understand that it might be difficult to see these changes only within 6 months, or there might be a quite limited change that you can create in 6 months, and we're completely aware of that. But still, we would very much want you to sort of reflect on what are the changes that you want to create by this particular project. And this change can be also a change in understanding within a discipline. You can say that I'm just going to change the way that the peace pedagogies are being delivered in this particular school or in this particular NGO, or I'm just going to focus on producing a particular peace education material as an outcome of this project. So this is just this is an output, it's not an impact, but it's just like really important that you talk about what is the change that you want to create. Can we just go to the next slide? So examples of the outcomes and impacts would be like, for example, adoption of methodology, a change in practice. So you can change a practice. If you're working with an NGO or an arts-based organization, you can say that I changed their practices in this particular way. Or if you're working with policymakers, you can say that this will lead to a change in how they approach their policies and how they implement their policies. You could argue that it could be a cleaner environment, a healthier, more peaceful communities. You can argue that an impact or an outcome could be a change in attitude, skills, aspirations, or knowledge. It could be filling a gap and in knowledge, sort of converting an uncertainty into certainties. As I said, a new knowledge or understanding of a particular concept within a given discipline as well. So you can say that I'll change the way that this particular art methods can be used in, I don't know, like in peace education, so on. Or you can say that this is a local peace building, a method that we're using in this particular community, and I'm going to bring that into peace education, and we'll use it, to change the understanding of how peace can be told. Next slide, Joe, please. So what are the outcomes? So there's often a confusion about outcomes, impacts, and outputs. So, for example, reports, publications, the data you collected, workshops, description of the program, process, exhibition, artifacts, a number of people attending a meeting, a number of people enrolled in a program, number of people completing a survey. So all the things that you produce, these kind of things are your output. So they're not outcomes or impacts of your project. Joe, next slide, please. And the final, as you approach as you design your research project, so as you approach the later stages, you have to think about dissemination, and this is also one of the questions you need to answer in the application form. So how will you disseminate this project? It is important for us because also the funding agency, because they will need to see, how your project will reach the wider audience. And how will you make the research results available to others? Will there be exhibitions? Will there be conferences? Will there be workshops? So what is your dissemination strategy? How will you make sure that this small scale important project that you have carried on, which has the potential to create an impact or change the understanding of a particular concept in the field, can reach to a wider audience? How you can do this particular project in Africa can speak to wider audiences in other parts of Africa or in other parts of the world. So it's really important that you need to think about dissemination, and dissemination can be in any form. It can be, as I said, exhibitions, it can be in shows. If you're doing a dance shows, you can just record those shows and display it to a wider audience and so on. So you really need to think carefully about the ways in which you want to disseminate your research and quite engaging in a creative way. Joe, can I have the next slide, please? Yes. can we just go? I think I have to highlight here. So dissemination plan should include which results will be reported, what audience will be reached, how the results or the products will be disseminated. So will it be in the professional journals, publication of books, chapters, monographs, videotapes, blog pieces, or even sometimes, what we really value in this project is the books that you co-author with your participants. So in a recent edited book that I have completed with Faith McManancy from another project, we actually, some of the chapters co-authored with the youth or with the young people that they work with, and this adds quite a bit of a meaning because often the communities do not hear what is written about them. So it's really important that you even co-author a blog pieces for our website, and then we can look into the ways to publish or disseminate to other media organs as well. You can make interviews, you can engage with local media, you can say that you can invite local or national media into your events. That's what we've done in one of our projects as well, where you can broadcast your results and have a news feed about your project. Next slide, please, Joe. So when it comes to the project management, you will see that there are 4 important questions that you need to respond to. So ODA compliance. ODA compliance, as Parvati highlighted, this is coming from an aid money, so it's an aid budget. So ODA compliance, official development assistance compliance, is that how this project will contribute to development of the country that you're working in. And this could be cultural, political, economic development, and so on. So it could be linked, you should link this to SDG goals and make it clear how this project will directly or indirectly contribute to the goals stipulated in SDGs or any kind of economic and political, social, or cultural, it could be cultural development of the country in which you're working in. Risk management is about, particularly given that we're living in an age of post-pandemic or still pandemic. So what happens if there's an outbreak, and do you have a contingency plans and so on to do this research? What are your risk management? How will you do you have alternatives? What is your plan B if you can't deliver these outputs, and or what you have promised in the project? And this risk management in addition to pandemic can be also related how you will mitigate the risk of your participants dropping out, or other risks that you see if you're working particularly with vulnerable populations like displaced populations or minors. So you need to also include the risk management of what are the risks associated with it and how do you intend to respond to these risks if they come up. Data management is about how you will going to manage your data, so where your data will be stored and how you will ensure the anonymity of your participants, how you will ensure the issues around data protection. So these are the things that we want to see, and this is of course again the conversations you need to have with your partners, because it will be a collaborator project, and it's really important that you discuss these data protection issues, making sure that you don't create any identifiable data, or even if you create identifiable data, which might be the case because we're working with arts methods, you need to make sure that you get the appropriate consents for it, and people are okay to be, like when you share their videos, when you share their photos, they're okay and they consented to those videos that identify them or photos that identify them to be shared with a wider audience. Monitoring and evaluation, as I have mentioned in the objectives and goals, you need to make it clear how you will monitor your progress in this 6 months project. So what are your objectives? What are your milestone activities? And how you make sure that you reach these goals? So what are your evaluation strategies, and this could be, you can invite people, external people, to monitor your project. You can do sort of interim evaluation meetings, interviews, or survey policies, and so on, these kind of methods. So it's about you to come up with your monitoring and evaluation strategies, but it is really important for you as the PIs or PIs of the project that you meet all goals and objectives stipulated in your introduction, actually. Joe, the next one. And lastly, we would love to hear about your team and project partners. So you need to say, who is your team, who is your principal investigator, who is your co-investigator, who are your partners. And these partners, as I said, can be artists, can be NGOs, can be charities, and can be grassroots organizations or grassroots even community movements and so on. So it is really important that you list the non-academic but also non-academic partners that you will be collaborating with in this particular project. I think that's it in a nutshell. These are what we are looking for, and now we will open the ground for questions.
Hi, thanks everyone. Thank you so much. Just a couple of, and thanks particularly to Joe and Millie for picking up the baton today. Just a couple of things to kind of more to attune this call to the project that we are, all this advice to the particular project that we are advertising for. You'll find that actually the application process consists of filling in small boxes with particular forms of data that we're, particular things that we're asking for. So follow the guidelines that we've set out there. And I think it's really useful to have these wider conversations, but remember that actually our project itself is slightly different in the sense of what we're emphasizing, but also how much space we're giving you to talk about some of these things, given that we've got a much shorter window for the funding. We're probably asking for slightly less information that perhaps, Melissa is, I think Melissa is really talking about how do you apply for grant projects more broadly. So do go and look at our FAQs as well to fine-tune some of the general advice that Melissa is giving to actually applying it to our grant. Not all of this will apply in exactly the same way here. And apologies that I couldn't kind of do this because of being unwell. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
There's a hand up from Peter. Peter, I think from Nigeria, yeah. I saw earlier.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for introducing yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Parvati. I'm sorry for you're not doing well. I hope you get well soon. Thank you to Joe and Melissa for the beautiful presentation. Yeah, I just wanted to ask if talking about peace education, I just wanted to know if maybe when I get to the site I will see, but I don't think there's I thought I should just mention it here. If there is a particular way or some kind of ways we should understand peace education, because I'm asking because I was just thinking, because back here in Nigeria, there's a whole lot of challenge with youth, what I mean youth, young ones, who are still quite teenagers, 15, 16, 17, about that age. So what is being experienced now is the vast majority of them want to go into internet fraud, online fraud, and all of that. And they get into all kinds of practices, or some will call them fetish practices, sacrifices here and there, which in a broader sense, I think could be looked at from the whole idea of peace education. So I was just thinking if there is a way you conceptualize peace education. Well, my my background is philosophy, so I do some kind of conceptualization a lot. I just wanted to have an idea around this. Thank you.
Great, thanks ever so much. Thank you, Peter. And thanks for coming along for the session as well. So 2 points to make. One of them is that we're interested in education for peace, which means that the values and knowledges of peace can be embedded in any form of education. Yeah. And so it should be, how does this help to develop a curriculum? It might be pedagogic in things that we can learn from this. There's often an experimentation phase. So typically the way that the project cycle has been conceived by many people is that they identify some values and skills of people, sometimes through oral history, sometimes through photo voice, soundscapes, whatever. Then they apply it into education and working closely with the school in most instances, and then think about how that can leave an inheritance into teacher education. For instance, from these experiments in this teaching, we've learned that actually these are some of the things that we could do in order to develop some, and which can be embedded in teacher education. So that tends to be the cycle that has been utilized. So it doesn't have to be in peace classes. It can be education for peace, which means that it could be embedded into any part of the curriculum. The second part of that answer is that because this is a conflict and education project call that we are part of, which is the Network Plus call, that does mean that we are looking for projects that, that recognize that there is, what is conflict. So in some cases, conflict has been caused by the, like very clearly from Boko Haram, people fleeing that, but other times it's due to climate change or, gendered conflict. So it can be social, economic, or political conflict. I hope that answers your question, but please do come back if there is any other things that we can, if that's not clear.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It does. It's quite clear now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Catherine?
Hi, yes, thank you. I'd put my question in the chat, but it's probably easier to just ask it here. So I work with a Rwandan genocide education charity, but they operate mainly within the UK. So it's drawing on sort of values of peace education from Rwanda and then bringing those into British schools through sort of storytelling practices and creative methods. So I'm wondering if there is scope that you would consider projects that work with charities that aren't necessarily based in Africa, but which are run by members of the African diaspora and are for the benefit of sort of African diasporic communities as well.
Not entirely, because I mean, that sounds like a great project and it's really interesting, but unfortunately, we're really primarily focusing on spend in Africa because this is an ODA project. And so ODA compliance requires that the original call that we had meant that 60% of the funding had to be spent in Africa. At this point, that particular requirement has been lifted, or at least it has been it is less imperative, but we're still working more, much more closely with that kind of, roughly with that kind of a spend pattern.
Okay. Yeah.
So we'd be very happy to support any that if that was, if the spend was still in Rwanda.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Alexander.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. I just got this last call, so I think you touched on this when you were speaking to I'm not sure I got her name, but what I wanted to find out, I'm not sure if you can get me. What I wanted to find out is does the project support a concept which, for instance, has been conceptualized within the African context? I am coming from Zambia, and then, for instance, you conceptualize a program within, within the Zambian context or African context. Does this project support, such interventions or such programs? For example, to work with an organization that's not predominantly in the continent. For example, you might say as a partner on the project, you might want to work with an organization that does work related to maybe education in peace, maybe just sort of go capacity issues around that. But does that sort of work? Or you only have to work with organizations or partners just within the continent?
Yeah, I think that the one sort of element of this is that it's about decolonization. So the question is, how does it shift power relations? How does it use arts and humanities? How does it support education for conflict? If it manages to acquire, achieve all of these, and it still has a significant spend in Africa, then actually I'm not sure that we can't fund that. But I think it would depend on the specifics, and we're very happy to have an individual call with people who have questions in order to try and help you to develop your ideas. We have been working closely with people who would like to develop ideas, suggesting, actually, yes, this we would be very happy to do. One of the things that we're trying to do in our attempt to decolonize is to actually also use this as an opportunity to widen and, to spread the money, and spread the money in all kinds of ways, right? At one level, it could be just the fact that during COVID, we wanted to make sure that as much of the money got spread in camps, in the IDP camps, for instance, so that people could buy and spend. So we were trying to employ people in the camps in order to get, so there's money circulating there at a time when there was real hardship. So, trying to address that kind of everyday politics of inequalities in multiple ways, political, economic, and epistemic. So I don't think that completely answers your question, Alexander, but I hope you get the ethos, and we're very happy to have a separate conversation with you for the detail, if that would help.
Yeah,
we don't have a project in Zambia, so that's also great. Not that we're here to collect projects per se in different parts. Definitely, I think Northern Africa is a huge gap for us, so we're very interested in that. And I put earlier in the chat, I put some of the other specific areas that that we'd love to see. But remember that none of us know the universe of possibilities. All of you have come here because you have so much to offer, right? And we are therefore here to learn from you about what we have as our gaps as well. So just because I haven't mentioned it here doesn't mean that you don't have great projects that we would love to fund.
Okay, that will be great. Thank you. Fine.
Thanks. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Any other questions? I can't see any hands up.
No, me neither.
We've got a question in the chat, which is, I've answered a few of them. There's one from Linda, which says, could I check, should there be a specific partnerships with UK and other African countries, or could the project be conducted in one country?
One country is absolutely fine. I think what's really important is some of the practical parts of it. We're really ambitious, but also at the same time recognize the importance of feasibility, that this should be deliverable. And we are conscious, and in the next session, we will do much more about some of the very practical issues about how do we deliver on the ground. For instance, data management, ethics, other things that you need an academic partner in another country to help you with. We're here to help you with some of those things. It's not that we're going to leave you alone to do them. So for instance, if you're an African NGO who's already doing a lot of work on this, and we're in conversations with a network in South Sudan, for instance, we'd probably look at doing the ethics for them through the Open University. So there's all kinds of walks around that we can do. And we definitely do not expect lots of African partners because the amounts of money are not huge. So what we're expecting is good quality focused work, which is decolonial education, and it's arts and humanities based. Can I just also, Craig, you've got your hand up. Craig, perhaps you can introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, thanks, Parvati. Thanks, Joe. Melise. Hi, everyone. So I'm Craig Walker. I'm a co-investigator on the project as well. I just wanted to link a couple of the conversations here. Melise, when you were talking about the arts methods and bringing artists into the projects, and then with Parvati, you talking about spreading the money within the communities. We've looked to do lots of different types of training. A couple of the projects have linked those two. So think about where there's expertise in arts and skill arts methods within the communities and bringing that out rather than necessarily putting artists in. So in Uganda, for example, some of the youth were trained in photography and videography already. So rather than bring in experts from outside, we brought them in to run the training for us. So just get a bit creative with spreading the money in the communities and the arts methods. Thanks.
And the same in Zimbabwe when we work with cultural heritage,
Exactly.
crafts and so on. And when we say artists, actually these people are also artists, no? Like they're local artists.
Very good point.
Try to do that cultural heritage, that kind of baskets or wooden work like this. The one I get from Zimbabwe, being like, if you can do this, you're just, and lots of community members can do this. They're artists, so I can't do that. I don't know if anyone can do it, but so exactly. Even we are working with the communities, there might be photographers, who are really skilled at photography and so on, who can deliver this kind of, as Craig saying. So when we say artists, don't think about artists as, we have lots of no artists among us.
Asli, you have a comment. Shall I just respond to that one, which is on unforeseeable research challenges? They're always ongoing because you're definitely working with people who are often traumatized. So one of the things that, for instance, in both in Ethiopia as well as in Nigeria, we've paid for counselors to work with those who have been traumatized. We also stopped doing some work with young women because it was reigniting trauma. So we left behind mental well-being and counseling sessions, but we did not continue with the research. So sometimes withdrawing from some things but recognizing that early, stopping it, and then starting something else in conversations with us is always possible. One of the things to say is that we kind of think ourselves as a really large group. We have meetings every Monday morning at 10 o'clock UK time. And all our team, I think at the moment we have some 34 people or something who are invited to attend that. Not everybody makes every meeting, but most people actually do attend many meetings. So we have, we have all teams are pretty much represented at the meetings. It becomes an opportunity to share materials, to share our learnings and so on. In terms of the overall project itself, the intellectual property rights for the project remains with the groups who have generated this project. But on the other hand, we do require, and these are official requirements, which we will go through next time in more detail, that the data is uploaded onto a free portal, because that's one of the things that we have promised. So therefore, it should be packaged and made available. So make sure that you keep some funding for working up the data into something which can be delivered and uploaded after anonymization. And we'll go through things like supporting you through anonymization and data protection in order to do that. We will also hold sessions to help you with the data management, to explain to you how to manage data and also help you with the ethics. So there will be kind of ongoing support for all the team members. The other things that we have is we are developing an open education resource with UNISA, which is the University of South Africa, and the data is being collated and compared across the projects in order to develop some notions of values and skills, which can be used in, say, teacher education. We also have a follow-on project, which Melise was the principal investigator on, which is on utilizing some of this with artists. So developing that part of the impact a lot more, and which will add to the other open education resources. So one of the opportunities we have, and we would strongly encourage you to do, is to contribute to those conversations and have your material added on. So for instance, we found that even though we had some proof of concept projects with whom we have been working for 2 years, people who came in much later, whom we did not know 6 months ago, have been absolutely central for reigniting the project and have actually been, coming for every session, changing the tone of the conversation. So this is not a project which is set in stone. It's a project which it's a conversation we're inviting you into. So you can help us to reshape what we should be thinking as well. So we're here to learn and not just to tell. Ashley, I hope that helps a little bit.
I think we're aware of the time as well, conscious of the time as well. So I don't think we have further questions. We'll just end the session here. But
we just take some of those questions quickly first for those who are still here. So I was wondering if it's possible for a project that relies on interviews with specific groups, example, prisoners, IDPs, but that translates the data into trauma or an animation. Yes, it is. But remember, this has got to be decolonial. You've got to think what's in it for the prisoners. And we have people in our teams who have worked with arts methods in prisons and with IDPs who have in order to kind of decolonize that work. So we've got experience and expertise there. If you wanted us to put you in touch with somebody, we can do that as well. Linda, thanks so much. We are doing work around decoloniality and would like to explore students, young people's experience, views. Many of our students themselves are from communities where there's a lot of inequality. That sounds really interesting. I'm not sure which country you're from, but definitely would be something that we'd be happy to look at. Dear colleagues, can we design a project to implement CA? Not sure what CA is in Mozambique, since the country is being constantly in terms of, yes, absolutely, very happy to look at Mozambique. It's not currently at one of our partner countries, and we'd be very happy to look at that. One of the things to remember to do is make sure that you've got money put away for translation. And I say this as somebody who's also got another project working with Mozambique, that because of access, and it is really important. And this is not just in the case of Mozambique, but also, for instance, in the Nigerian project, we're working with Glavda speakers. So it's not easy to find Glavda translators. We do need to work with them. And think innovative. So some of the things that we are trying to do is we are inviting, for instance, artists, perhaps even Glavda elders, to present at hybrid conferences in Europe, right? So that we pierce the kind of borders between academics and ordinary people, between academics and artists, between academics and NGOs. So think innovative and think across the board about all of this. But I think what we'd like to do more than anything is to leave behind a history of change and to invite you all to take part in our journey on along that path. Thank you. Great, Toby, will definitely send you a message. Thanks. And I think there are no further questions. So if so, then feel free to send us separate questions and do attend further sessions. Thank you so much to all of you for coming. Look forward to having as many of you on board as possible. Thank you.
Oh, don't leave.
Thanks. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. And thanks very much to Joe and Melise again, because we couldn't have done this without them. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'm just putting. Okay.